Friends from the media, good afternoon. Welcome to press conference. First, I'd like to issue two messages. At the invitation of President of the Republic of Djibouti, Ismail Omar Guelleh, and President of the Republic of Uganda, President Xi Jinping's Special Envoy and Vice Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, Luosang Jiangcun, will travel to Djibouti City for the inauguration of President Guelleh on May 9th and to Kampala for the inauguration of President Museveni on May 12th. At the invitation of Costa Rica, President Xi Jinping's Special Envoy and Chairman of the International Development Cooperation Agency, Chen Xiaodong, will attend the presidential handover ceremony in Costa Rica's capital, San Jose, from May 7th to 8th. Next, you may raise your questions.
China Arab TV, according to the Philippine media report, today the Type 88 missile of Japan was launched for the first time in the Balikatan military exercise, which is the first time for Japan to launch offensive missiles overseas after the World War II, was China's comment.
Japan bears grave historical responsibilities for Southeast Asian countries, including the Philippines, due to its aggression and colonial rule. In this special year, which marks the 80th anniversary of the beginning of the Togo trials, the once aggressor has failed to deeply reflect on its historical crimes. Instead, it has sent military forces overseas and fired offensive missiles under the pretext of security cooperation. This move once again proves that Japanese right-wing forces are pushing for accelerated remilitarization of Japan. They have repeatedly breached Japan's exclusively defense-oriented policy and relevant rules in international and domestic laws. Some of their policies and moves have gone far beyond the scope of self-defense. The series of lack of education on true history, the fundamentally wrong historical views, and the strategic attempts for military rearmament have led to the malevolent emergence of neo-militarism in Japan and threatened regional peace and stability. We urge the Japanese side to deeply reflect on its history of militarist aggression and honor its commitments and stay prudent in military and security areas. Next question, please.
谢谢中国日报提问。我们注意到日前赖清德乘坐斯威士兰飞机偷探外交自主，但却被国际社会和岛内民众
China Daily. Lighting sneaked into Eswatini on his plane while in Eswatini he spoke about diplomatic independence, yet the international community and people in Taiwan described his action as thief life and an international joke. What's your response? Even though there was widespread opposition, Lighting sneaked onto a foreign plane and cheated himself into Eswatini by colluding with the country to conceal passenger information. On his return flight, after use of airspace was rejected by relevant countries, Lai again slipped into the country which forced its way through the airspace. By cheating his way into Eswatini and forcing his way back, Lai apparently showed the world how little respect he has for relevant countries' airspace and sovereignty, and how little he cared for the opinion of the world. What he did was extremely dangerous and unhinged. The fact that he would smuggle himself into the country shows exactly how Taiwan independent separatism is shady business and unacceptable to the international community. His act was nothing but a scandal and stunt. Some politicians in Eswatini who were kept in Taiwan's pay have been acting against the trend of history by providing space to Taiwan independence. China strongly condemns it. In recent years, we've been hearing people from various sectors in so-called Taiwan's diplomatic allies strongly calling on their countries to grow ties with China. Which is the right thing to do? To see where the arc of history bends and respond to their people's will, or to continue serving as a political prop and putting up a front for Lai Ching-te and his kind? The politicians in these countries need to think twice, make the wise decision, and stop going further down the doomed path. There's but one China in the world, and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. Facts have proven time and again that the One China principle is an international consensus that has solid support and is simply unshakable. The pursuit of Taiwan independence is a dead end, and its days are numbered. The more frantic Lin Jian's attempts are, the less possible they will lead him anywhere. We urge those separatist forces to turn back from the wrong course, which is the only right choice. Next one, please.
Thank you. A question from AFP. In the talks between Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Iran's Foreign Minister in Beijing today, what issues were discussed? Did Minister Wang Yi push Iran to resume allowing the safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz? I wonder if the Chinese Foreign Ministry can introduce anything about the talks today. Thank you.
On May 6th, a member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with Iranian Foreign Minister Arakchi. The two sides exchanged views on bilateral relations and international and regional affairs. We will release relevant information, and you can stay tuned.
谢谢发言人。北京广播电视台记者提问：我们注意到最新统计显示，刚刚过去的五一假期。
Beijing Daily, according to the latest statistics, during this year's May Day holiday, it's estimated that over 1.5 billion cross-regional trips were made in China, a daily average of more than 300 million, up by 4% from last year was made. Hotel group purchase sales increased by 86% year-on-year. Box office exceeded 750 million yuan. In particular, inbound tourism recorded phenomenal growth as China becomes the destination of choice of more and more foreign tourists. Many see this as the indicator of the strong pulse of China's economy. What's your comment? Perhaps many of you, home or abroad, had a first-hand experience of the May Day holiday boom in various destinations across China. The data you just mentioned demonstrate the strong resilience of China's economic growth and the huge potential of the Chinese market. We also noted that more and more foreign tourists came to China during the holiday to experience the strong sense of safety and sweet moments of everyday life unique to this country. This also attests to the appeal of China's policies and measures towards facilitating cross-border travel, guided by its commitment to high-level opening up. China will open its door wider to the world. As the Chinese-style movable feast brings prosperity across borders, it will surely inject more vitality and positive expectations into the world economy. Next one, please.
Two questions from Russia today. Thank you. Donald Trump recently called Xi Jinping very respectful, adding that Washington hasn't been challenged by Beijing. And the U.S. president also said he had offered China the option to send the ships to the United States, essentially suggesting that China buy American oil instead of Iranian oil. So how does Beijing respond to these remarks, and would China ever consider such an offer? And a second question, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently, well, you could say, lectured China on being a good global citizen, demanding that Beijing support the U.S.-led military operation in the Strait of Hormuz, and also accusing China of obstructing UN initiatives. Given Washington's long history of unilateral military interventions and bypassing the UN when convenient, how does the ministry respond to this call from Washington?
Regarding your first question, China and U.S. maintained communication regarding Trump's visit to China. Regarding the Iranian situation, China has made its position quite clear for multiple times. For China's specific questions regarding China's energy policy, I refer you to competent authorities. Regarding our second question, China's position on the Strait situation is quite clear, is that we hope relevant sides would act with prudence and avoid escalation and resolve disputes through dialogue and restore peace and tranquility in the Strait. China will continue to make efforts to de-escalate the situation and will make utmost effort to protect the safety and security of Chinese ships and crew. Next question, please.
谢谢发言人。湖北广电记者提问：据报道，近日安提瓜。
According to reports, results of the recent general election in Antigua and Barbuda have been released. The Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party won 15 of the 17 seats in the House of Representatives. Leader of the party, incumbent Prime Minister Gaston Brown, has secured another term in office. Does China have any comment? China congratulates Prime Minister Gaston Brown on winning another term. We stand ready to work with Antigua and Barbuda, a good friend and partner in the Caribbean, to continue deepening practical cooperation in various areas and bring our friendly relations to a new level and deliver more benefits for both peoples. Next question, please.
Thank you, Associated Press. It's a follow-up question about the Iran situation. So the U.S. government has also been asking China to put more pressure on Iran to not only end the war but open the Strait of Hormuz. What would you say about that?
The situation in the Strait of Hormuz is continually tense. So long as we reach a ceasefire as soon as possible, can we create necessary conditions for the de-escalation of the situation. The territorial security and territorial integrity of Gulf countries should be respected, and legitimate security concerns of regional countries should be paid attention to. The legitimate rights and interests of the international community should be maintained. Next question, please.
Thank you. Bloomberg News. You say China and the U.S. are in communication on Trump's visit. Do you have any details on that visit, such as when it might happen? Thanks.
You can stay tuned.
A question from the New York Times. Did China coordinate with the United States the American decision overnight to pause escorts of vessels through the Strait of Hormuz so as to give today's talks between China and Iran a chance of making progress? Thank you.
I've made China's position clear just now on the situation of Strait of Hormuz. China's position has been clear. We hope relevant parties could act with prudence and avoid escalation, resolve conflict through dialogue, and restore peace and tranquility of the Strait. China will continue to make efforts to de-escalate the situation.
Thank you, spokesperson. Two questions, but I will start with one first. It's a follow-up to Taiwan leader Lin Jian's return flight from Eswatini. We wanted to know if, based on the flight route that we've seen, he has taken a rather long flight path back to Taiwan. So we wanted to know if China has spoken or made any requests to countries such as Madagascar and Mauritius about letting his flight through their airspace. Also, we noted that on his way back, he did fly over Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Brunei, and Australia. Has China reached out to these countries? Were there any engagement pre or after the travel back for Lai? And whether China has summoned any ambassadors to talk about this? Thank you.
召集了这些国家的大使，对他们进行做工作。
Whether to open territorial airspace is the sovereignty of all countries. Some countries uphold the One China principle and refuse to issue flight permit for Lai Ching-te. Such just acts is in line with international law and basic norms of international relations. This speaks to the fact that the One China principle is what the major trend of international community, and the separatist acts of Taiwan independence forces do not win support. Next question, please.
A question from AFP. The 48th summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations will be held in the Philippines this week. Is China sending a delegation? And if so, who will represent China? Thank you.
According to Euro practice, the ASEAN summit is attended by leaders of ASEAN member states. Dialogue partners are not included. Next question, please.
Thank you. Ukraine Foreign News Agency. Two questions. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has said that Ukraine is declaring a ceasefire starting May 6 and expects reciprocal actions from Russia. According to him, Ukraine considers human life to be of far greater value than any anniversary celebration. Would the ministry like to comment on this new ceasefire proposition? And the second question is about two Chinese citizens who fought against Ukraine on Russia's side and were captured last spring. They have been in captivity for a year. Ukraine can hand them over only to Russia, but Moscow is not interested in them. I'd like to ask whether the Chinese government remembers about these two mercenaries and is taking measures to free them from Ukrainian captivity. Thank you.
On the Ukraine crisis, China's position is crystal clear. We support all efforts for peace and hope relevant parties will continue to resolve the crisis through dialogue and negotiations. On the second question, China asks the Ukrainian side to follow the relevant international laws to safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese nationals and ensure that they are treated humanely. We've issued multiple security alerts to ask Chinese nationals to stay away from areas of armed conflict, avoid any form of involvement in armed conflict, and in particular avoid participation in any party's military operations. Next question, please.
Thank you, spokesperson. Another question from Reuters. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has a report now on the China Eastern Flight MU-5735 showing that the fuel switches to both engines on this flight were shut off simultaneously before the plane crashed in March 2022. That suggests that the flight may have been intentionally crashed. Does China have any response to this report? Thank you.
The specific question you raised, please, I refer you to relevant competent authorities. Next question, please.
A question from the New York Times. Has China asked Iran to stop attacking ships carrying the exports of other Persian Gulf nations? Thank you.
I've just mentioned So long as we reach comprehensive ceasefire, can we build conditions to ease the tension in the Strait of Hormuz. Our position has been clear. The security and territorial integrity of countries of the Gulf should be respected, and the international community's legitimate rights and interests must be safeguarded.
Thank you, Bloomberg again. The Foreign Ministry's statement on Wang Yi's meeting with the Iranian Foreign Minister says that China seeks a bigger role in restoring Middle Eastern peace. Can you give us any details on what that bigger role would look like? Thank you.
In the meeting with Foreign Minister Arakchi, Foreign Minister Wang Yi stressed that since the outbreak of the war, China has been actively promoting peace talks. President Xi's proposal of promoting and safeguarding peace in the Middle East, the 4-point proposal, have been receiving support of the international community. Currently, the situation is at a transition point. China believes that comprehensive ceasefire should be immediate, and we should not have a restart of the war. We should, all the more important, stick to negotiations. China supports the Iranian side to uphold national security and sovereignty, commends Iranian side to seek political settlement through diplomatic channels. Regarding the Strait of Hormuz, the international community have a mutual concern regarding the normal passage of the Strait of Hormuz. China hopes relevant parties to respond to the strong calls of the international community. China calls that the Strait and Middle East countries should hold their fate firmly in their hands, encourage Iran and to conduct dialogue with more Strait countries to realize good neighborliness and friendship, to realize a peace and security structure that is conducive to common development. Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that China is willing to uphold the 4-point proposal proposed by President Xi and set the goal of building 4 common homes and continue to support the peace talks and play a bigger role for the peace and tranquility in the Middle East. Regarding the specific information, you can refer to the news outread. Next question, please.
China Arab TV. Recently, the UK government announced sanctions on entities and individuals on the grounds of providing military supplies such as drone parts to Russia. The sanctions targets 2 Chinese entities. What's China's comment on that?
China opposes unilateral sanctions that have no basis in international law or the authorization of the UNSC. China strongly deplores the UK's move and has lodged serious protests with the UK side. On the Ukraine crisis, China has been committed to promoting talks for peace and strictly controlled the export of dual-use items. Normal exchanges and cooperation between China and Russia should not be disrupted or affected. China will do what is necessary to firmly protect its legitimate and lawful rights and interests. Next question, please.
Thank you. Question from RIA Novosti. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio commenting on China Ministry of Commerce order to block U.S. sanctions against 5 Chinese refiners over alleged Iran oil ties, said yesterday, I quote, if you don't comply with sanctions, you will face secondary sanctions. I wonder what's China's reaction on these remarks. Thank you.
China's relevant authorities has made China's position clear. What I want to stress that China always opposes sanctions without international law or authorization of the UNSC. Relevant regulations are carried out according to law and applied to relevant laws. China will keep a close eye on the situation related to the unjustified extraterritorial application of foreign legislation and other measures in relevant countries, and China will firmly safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese citizens and companies in accordance with the law. Next question, please.
Thank you. Another one from RIA Novosti. Russia will hold the Victory Day parade on May 9th. The Kremlin previously announced that foreign guests would attend the parade in Moscow. Could you please provide information who will represent China this year? Thank you.
I don't have relevant information.